A world first, here we go again, alongside several deadline day plot twists. Meanwhile, 3 former Man United managers sacked in 3 days, and Barca's Camp Nou return is finally here. This is DMAC Daily. The 2025 summer transfer window was one for the books, with the Premier League in particular taking centre stage. 2 record deals completed by Liverpool and over £3 billion collectively spent, smashing the previous record of £2.36 billion back in 2023. Yet, ironically, it was a transfer away from the Premier League on deadline day that was perhaps the most fascinating in Nicholas Jackson. For those who were unfamiliar with the saga leading into deadline day, basically, Jackson was no longer wanted at Chelsea. They'd signed 2 strikers this window with a 15 mil loan move to Bayern seemingly locked in. Jackson flew to Munich. We got a here we go from Fabrizio, but Delap then pulled his hamstring, which caused a chaotic domino effect, where Chelsea first tried to sign another young forward before pulling the plug on Mark Guehi's loan at Sunderland alongside this Jackson deal. So now Chelsea had 4 nines. It was bizarre. Munich confirmed the deal was officially off. They'd suddenly turned their attention to Ademola Lookman, but all the while, Jackson's management remained adamant their striker would sign with the German champions. His agent even took to Instagram saying, "We're not going back, the plane doesn't go backwards." And in peak deadline day fashion, all parties suddenly renegotiated to make this deal happen again, to make here we go again. The updated terms included an increased loan fee plus a conditional obligation to buy for 65 mil. According to The Athletic, these conditions are expected to be met. That's a way better outcome for Chelsea than the previous option to buy agreement. So Chelsea will most likely bank over 80 mil from Jackson in the next year. They also had another piece of deadline day business which was interesting, with Ben Chilwell's transfer from Chelsea to Strasbourg. Despite both clubs being owned by the Blueco consortium, current FIFA UEFA rules still allow these moves to take place as long as the fee reflects fair market value, which to me makes absolutely no sense, because if Todd Boehly is selling to Todd Boehly, is he actually selling to anyone? It's straight up FFP laundering. The conflict of interest is so blatant, but this is nothing new. It's the 4th permanent transfer between the 2 clubs this window, and that's excluding the Enciso deal, which I still can't wrap my head around. But shifting gears away from Chelsea's, and Mark Guehi's transfer collapse was just as wild. Having been linked with the Reds all summer, it seemed inevitable that on deadline day, Liverpool would finally land their key defensive target. The Isak deal was done. By all accounts, Guehi wanted the move too. However, Palace needed to find a suitable replacement before giving the green light. They thought they found one in Brighton centre-back Igor Julio, but the Brazilian instead opted for another London club in West Ham. So despite Liverpool completing Guehi's medical and having the 35 mil ready to go, ultimately Palace didn't allow it to happen. Ironically, they kept Guehi and quietly brought in another defender, paying 27 mil for Toulouse centre-back Jedi Canveau. It does make you wonder, did Guehi pay the price for being the consummate professional? I mean, think about it. Isak made it abundantly clear he was done, despite Newcastle's unwillingness to sell, and in the end, the Swede got his wish. Johan Visser was an eerily similar scenario, whereas Guehi never made a fuss, never spoke publicly, and ultimately didn't get his desired transfer. Speaking of not getting your desired transfer, Emi Martinez hasn't had the best of summers. Now, he wasn't nearly as controversial as Isak or Visser in pursuing a move at all costs, but it was very clear that he wanted to leave his club Aston Villa. Atletico Madrid were rumoured, but the clear favourites to his potential signature was Manchester United. They'd inquired about a loan move back in pre-season, but Villa were only willing to negotiate a permanent deal in excess of 30 mil. As the season kicked off, both of United's goalkeepers then made embarrassing blunders, so they needed to sign a new shot stopper ASAP. But the Red Devils had since profiled an alternative option in Belgian youngster Seny Lamens of Royal Antwerp, and on deadline day, they inevitably opted against the World Cup winning keeper in favour of the cheaper 23-year-old. So what now for Dibu? Well, Marco Bizot has deputised brilliantly in his absence. However, I'd imagine the Argentine is still the club's first choice keeper if he remains. The only possible exit now is a move to Saudi Arabia or Turkey's Galatasaray. Their transfer window is still open, but I'm not sure he favours either environment. Now for some quick fire updates on deadline day, and there are a lot, starting with none other than Aston Villa, who have landed the freedom fighter himself Jadon Sancho on loan, and Liverpool's Harvey Elliott for £35 million. Spurs brought in PSG outcast Randall Kolo Muani on a season-long loan. Sunderland splashed out on 3 deadline day signings, with Ajax's Brian Brobbey and Bertrand Traore signing for a combined 22.5 mil, alongside Lucharel Geertruida Gertruda on loan, taking their summer spending to over 187 mil. A newly promoted club outspending Real Madrid. The game is officially gone. Johan Wissa got his move to Newcastle for 55 mil. Manuel Akanji heads to Inter Milan on loan, whilst Benjamin Pavard leaves on loan for Marseille. Real Betis land the GOAT on a 25 mil package, alongside another former United legend in Sofian Amrabat on loan. Emerick Laporte gets his move back to Bilbao. Juve signed Lois Openda on a loan with an obligation to buy for 40 mil, with Leipzig bringing in Konrad Harder as their replacement. Edison has officially joined Fenerbahce, with Donnarumma signing at City as his replacement. Fulham dropped 45 mil on Shakhtar's Kevin, what a Brazilian name that is. Villarreal signed Georges Mikotadze for 31 mil. Victor Boniface makes a loan switch to Werder Bremen, and Nottingham Forest signed 3 players on deadline day, with Zinchenko arriving on loan alongside Cuibano and Dile Mbakwa on permanent deals. Meanwhile, Ten Hag has officially become the 3rd former Manchester United manager to be sacked in the space of a week. Last Thursday, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was fired from Besiktas, having failed to qualify for the Conference League, and just a day later, it was Mourinho's turn to get the flick, having missed out on Champions League qualification with Fenerbahce. But these two would be outdone by the shock sacking of Erik ten Hag. The Dutchman lasted just 2 match days in Leverkusen, the fastest dismissal in Bundesliga history. Now you may be thinking, how could they give him so little time to make an impact? Especially considering that this club would be subject to a radical squad overhaul. I mean, they sold over 280 million euros worth of players, but according to the internal management of Leverkusen, Ten Hag's management gave them no choice. Sporting director Simon Rolfe stated, "No one wanted this step. However, the past few weeks have shown that building a new and successful team with this lineup is not going to be effective." And their club chairman reaffirmed their decision, saying, "A separation at this early stage of the season is painful, but from our perspective, it was necessary." This just begs the question though, what did Ten Hag do? The optics of this sacking are so embarrassing for both Leverkusen as a club, but particularly for the Dutch manager. Prior to his United appointment, this was one of the most sought out and respected managers across Europe. In the space of 3 years, he has completely tarnished his reputation. It's a cutthroat industry, but at least he'll get a decent payout for his work. And finally, Barcelona is set to return to the iconic Spotify Camp Nou. After 2 seasons spent at the Louis Company's Olympic Stadium whilst their home stadium was being renovated, it's now being reported that they will receive the green light to return to the Camp Nou on the 14th of September, albeit in a limited capacity. In September, 27,000 seats will become available. By October, that will rise to 45,000, and by November, hopefully 60,000. The final phase will grant full access of all 105,000 seats as the largest stadium in Europe. There's no confirmed timeline for the full release, as it includes a complicated roof installation, but 2026 remains the goal. Anyways, guys, that's all for today's DMAC Daily. Feel free to like, subscribe, and check out the Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.